Hello everyone, today we will discuss the integumentary system of the vertebrate. The integumentary system actually consists of the skin and its accessory organs like hair, nails, and some of the exocrine glands. So skin and the accessory organs, they make the integumentary system in case of vertebrate. You know that the skin, it is the largest and most superficial organ found in the body, and the skin, they provide so many important functions. For example, the most important and primary function of the skin is to provide a primary barrier, and this barrier provide protection to the underlying tissue from the pathogen. The pathogen may be either virus, maybe bacteria, maybe fungus. The skin also protects the underlying tissue from UV radiation because the skin contains melanin, and melanin have the function to absorb these UV radiations. The skin also contains sensory neuron, and they have the ability to sense touch, pain, temperature, and pressure by means of a dense network of sensory neurons. So this is another important function. The blood vessels which are found in the dermis of the skin, they provide an important function in the temperature regulation of the body. They regulate the temperature of the body by means of important mechanism like vasodilation. The skin also contains many accessory structures like hair, nails, exocrine glands, and the function of these is to support the skin. As far as the anatomy of the integumentary system is concerned, the skin consists of three important layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. So these are the three layers which are found in the skin. The epidermis is the top region or the top layer of the skin, and the dermis, this is the second largest layer, and this is the hypodermis. So these three layers are found in the skin. You know that epi means upon, dermis, upon the dermis, and hypo means below the dermis. So these are three important layers which are found in the skin. The epidermis, the most superficial layer of the skin, the epidermis contain no vessels or no capillaries are found in the epidermis. The lack of the blood vessels. So the cell of the epidermis, they receive the nutrients from the dermis by means of the process of simple diffusion. The dermis contain blood vessels, and that blood vessel, the nutrient like oxygen and different nutrients, they diffuse to the epidermis. And most of the body, the epidermis is arranged into four distinct layers. These layers are stratum basale. Stratum basale is the deepest region of the epidermis. So this is the stratum basale. And the stratum basale contain important cells like keratinocytes, melanocytes, and Merkel cells. These are the important cells which are found at the deepest layer of the skin, which is known as stratum basale. Keratinocytes contain protein. Melanocytes, they play important role in the formation of melanin, and you know that melanin are responsible for the coloration, and also they play important role in the absorption of UV radiation. The Merkel cell, these are the cells which sense light touch. And below the Merkel cell, the papillary region of the dermis, there is Merkel disc, and this is a sensory neurons which is attached to this, and they sense the touch, and the information passed through the sensory neuron to the spinal cord. So these are the important cells which are found at the stratum basale. Superficial to the stratum basale, this is another layer. This is known as stratum spinosum. Stratum spinosum consists of important cells like keratinocytes, and they also contain uh, dendritic cells. Dendritic cell will explain later on. So there is many rows of keratinocytes which are found in the stratum spinosum. Stratum granulosum. Stratum granulosum is the superficial to the stratum spinosum. And here, keratinocytes in the stratum granulosum produce a waxy lamellar granules. And the function of these granules, that the skin become waterproof due to these granules. Another layer is the stratum lucidum. Stratum lucidum is not found everywhere. They are only found in the skin of hand and feet. And they contain several keratinocytes. In the top layer of the skin is the stratum corneum. Stratum corneum, and actually the lucidum and corneum consist of many rows of dead keratinocytes. And the function of these keratinocytes is to protect the underlying tissue. And these dead keratinocytes shed from the skin from time to time, and they are replaced by the newly generated keratinocytes. Here, the stratum basale, the keratinocytes are divided mitotically and produce two cells. And this process is repeated, and the new cells go upward to stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, and then stratum lucidum and stratum corneum, where the dead keratinocytes are found, and they are shed and they are replaced by the newly formed keratinocytes, which are found at the stratum basale. So these are the important layer. The important one is stratum basale, where keratinocytes are divided mitotically by producing new cells. There are melanocytes which produce melanin. Melanin play important role in the absorption of UV radiation. There is marker cell. Marker cells sense light touch. There is at the stratum granulosum, there is lamellar granules which make the skin waterproof. In the dead keratinocyte, they protect the underlying tissue. So the epidermis is made of several cells. The keratinocytes, the majority of the cells, they are keratinocytes. Almost 90% of the cells is of keratinocyte. And melanocytes, these are the second superior cells which are found at the stratum basale. Melanocyte produce melanin, and melanin play an important role in the absorption of UV light. The dendritic cells, these are actually the immunological cells. These are derived from the monocytes, and actually these are antigen they determine the antigen they determine the antigen. So the immunological cells which determine the antigen. And you know this, the Merkel cells, these are the Merkel cells which are found at the stratum basale, and they sense light touch. So these are the important cells which are found in the epidermis. So keratinocyte develop from the stem cell at the base of the epidermis. Keratin makes the keratinocyte very tough. So keratinocyte contain important protein which is known as keratin, and the function is to make the skin tough. Melanocytes are produce the pigment which is known as melanin, and melanin are responsible for the formation of coloration of the skin. And another important function of this melanin is they protect the skin from UV radiation. Dendritic cell role is to detect and fight pathogen that attempts to enter the body through skin. So these are the important cells which are found in the epidermis. Merkel cells, keratinocytes, melanocytes, and dendritic cells. Now the dermis. The dermis is the deep layer of the skin found below the epidermis. The dermis actually consist of moderately dense connective tissue. And these are, the dermis is much thicker than the epidermis. And actually the dermis provide strength and elasticity to the skin. And the dermis is divided into two layers, the papillary layers and the reticular layers. The papillary layers are found at the superficial layer of the dermis, and they contain thin collagen. The other layer is the reticular layer. They are found at the deeper layer of the dermis, and here the collagen are much thicker as compared to the papillary layer. So there are two important region of the dermis, the papillary layer and the reticular layer. This is the actually the papillary layer. This is the papillary layer, the superficial layer of the dermis. And it also provide a border to the epidermis. And these are the papillary region. Here the papillary layer contain elastic collagen, thin elastic collagen. And the reticular layer, this is the deeper layer of the dermis. They contain also collagen, but these collagen are much thicker than the one which are found in the papillary layer of the dermis. Here a number of sensory neurons are present, sweat gland are present, hair follicle are present, but we will discuss its function later on. So dermis consists of two important layers, the papillary layer and the reticular layer. The dermis contains some of the important immunological cells, like it also contains dendritic cells. And you know that dendritic cells are a type of immunological cell, and the important function of these is they these are actually the antigen recognizing cells. Dermis also contains macrophages, and the important function of macrophages, they engulf the antigen. So they contain recognizing cell and antigen engulfing cell. Both are found in the dermis. They also consist of mast cells which have a large nucleus, dark stained granules, and these granules contain histamines. So whenever there is a traumatic injury to the dermis, these mast cells release the histamine, and they will mediate localized inflammatory responses. So these are the important cells which are found at the dermis region. Below the dermis is the hypodermis. The hypodermis primarily have adipose cells, and these adipose cells store fats in the form of triglyceride, and their function is they act like is insulating layer. So the skin consists of three important layers: the epidermis, which is the outer layer of the skin, the dermis, and the hypodermis. The hypodermis consists of various type of adipose cells, and these adipose cells they store fat in the form of triglyceride, and they act as an insulating material. So these are about the dermis and the integumentary system of the vertebrate. Thank you.